Yo, welcome to Vegabomber land. It's me, the Bomber, giving you my thoughts on the movie Straight Outta Compton. So if you watch my list from about, I don't know, a year ago, I talked about the movies in 2015 that I couldn't wait to see. And one of them was this one, Straight Outta Compton, the movie directed by F. Gary Gray. Now this movie started out with a budget of about $28 million, but the great surprise about this movie, because it's good, it ends up earning about $155 million, which is definitely a win, domestically, and about $180 worldwide. And so I'm extremely excited for NWA for this, and specifically more so for Cube and Dr. Dre, because they kind of kept this thing going and kept driving it. But anyway, let's talk about the movie. So anyway, if you're not aware, this is a biopic, but this ends up being the best biopic I've ever seen. And I say that just based off of the props that we'll get into in this film in a few minutes. But for those who are unaware, NWA was a rap group that kind of got started in the middle 80s. We really got some traction in the late 80s, and then eventually just put out some of the most angry songs ever about mistreatment that was going on at that time. In fact, they called the Rodney King thing before it even happened, because it was already happening in neighborhoods, but the world didn't know about it till 1991. But NWA was already talking about it with their reality raps, as I believe is what Ice Cube called it. So this movie starts off showing how this band basically got started. And what's delightful about this film is that while it grabs you immediately right away, it actually has a lot of humor in it for a movie called Straight Outta Compton. And if you've ever been to Compton, yeah, that's a tough part of town. But it's actually surprisingly funny, really good in this area, as well as showing you how these boys, these five young men, eventually got into a studio with the help of Eazy-E, and then eventually started recording what would be something that would change the landscape of rap music for a long time, and also a huge social commentary on what it goes down in this type of neighborhood. And they were the first big thing to come out of LA in a long time in terms of a band, as far as the band was concerned, and specifically Compton for sure. So everything is against these guys for them to make it, but instead they do make it. And so let's just talk about the props on this film. Well, first off, I would have to say that the acting was incredible. There are moments in this movie where you really do get emotionally involved into the film. And Paul Giamatti is probably the only name you might have heard of before this, maybe Aldous Hodge from a TV show that I think that he's on currently. But you get the debut of really Ice Cube's son, O'Shea Jackson Jr., who does a great job playing his dad. He studied for 2 years to get this thing down in terms of to learn how to act so that he could portray his dad. And how cool would that be to be able to do that? And he does it, and he does it convincingly. Also, the late Eazy-E, who's dead, Eric Wright, the actor who played him, Jason Mitchell, I believe, did a great job of just kind of personifying who Eazy-E was. And then I would say Corey Hawkins, who did Dr. Dre, again, looked like him as well. But his acting was also solid. So this movie had solid acting. That's one of the props for sure. For two, just the way it grabs your attention right off the bat in the first few frames. Just like the way Star Wars did and Indiana Jones did. The first few frames, it's all about action. You get that first. But then there's also laid back humor, good humor in it, just like in the movie Friday or any other good comedy that you may have seen. That wins. So this movie wins on all these different directions, and F. Gary Gray, who was the director of this film, he knew about Ice Cube, because you may remember F. Gary Gray from films like Friday, Set It Off, and The Negotiator, the one with Samuel Jackson and I believe Kevin Spacey. So F. Gary Gray, congratulations to you, you did well. Now, it's easy for me to gloat about this because I used to love this band when I was in college. I used to just love everything about them and what they were doing, because when you're in that age, you're looking for your voice and you want to say something that means something, and you definitely want to speak out against injustices, which they did. Now, I don't know that I'd go the same route in my career and the way my life is today, but I understand why they did it the way they did it. And of course, they're not squeaky clean by any means. What are the cons, or maybe the eye rolls about this film? Well, the film is directed and produced, and I guess mostly the storyline is given to you by Ice Cube himself, and Dr. Dre is a big contributor as well. So, sure, is there going to be are they going to be guilty of maybe just kind of telling things that make them look good? Of course. of course. But I think for those people who lobby against NWA on this film, saying that it didn't show everything, it didn't show this and this and that, well, the movie was already 2.5 hours long. It couldn't show everything, but it did show what was the main point of this film. So I believe if you look it up, you can find some stuff online where there was an assault charge, Dr. Dre, for getting into it with an MTV host who was a female. So yeah, there were issues, and actually it's mentioned in the film. He doesn't go to that detail, but he does say assault charges is one thing that he was dealing with as he's talking to a female who he's trying to get to come upstairs. So it's even addressed in the film, but certainly they didn't go into much detail, but they do mention it. And of course, people will say what they want to say. They'll say that maybe some of the characters didn't look like some of the characters in the film, but I would say the main guys, absolutely, yes, they did. My only cons to this whole film, really, or the eye rolls, would just be that the people that are kind of shooting at it as if they expect this to be a documentary. It's not a documentary. They're going to tell you whatever they're going to tell you, and to me, it fits the narrative. The whole Rodney King issue, police brutality, which is very relevant today, is something that you can see in this film. And they, going back to that time and seeing that, really kind of brought back memories of how crazy that time was, and then looking and seeing how where we are today. So this is real. This is the stuff that's happening. That's what they were doing. They were talking about what they saw when they stepped outside of their door. Just like somebody else stepping outside of their door might talk about something else. Well, you know, here in Vegabomber land, we have only 2 ratings. We don't play with the middle ground. A movie's either blowing up, which is a good thing, or a movie just needs to get detonated and blown up because it just needs to go away. But this movie, I'm going to say, is definitely blowing up. Yes. And by the way, this movie now is the #1 biopic ever. The #1 spot used to be the Johnny Cash film, Joaquin Phoenix, which was a good film. It was about 119 million. But right now at 155 million domestically, now that spot of #1 biopic ever released is owned by NWA. Good job, F. Gary Gray, and also for Universal. That's what 3 big films that you've done this year in the Fast 7, Jurassic World, and now this one. So anyway, what did you think of the film? Did you see it? Did it bother you that they didn't go into all this minute detail about a whole bunch of other things? Or did you think what was in the movie belonged in the movie based off the story that they were trying to tell with the movie? What was your thoughts? What did you think? Did you skip out on this movie? Are you thinking about skipping out on this movie? Did you already go? Well, I'll tell you this. I'm waiting for the Blu-ray because I can imagine what else is on there. Oh, and by the way, spoiler alert, the music, the soundtrack, yeah, Trey did it. That ought to tell you enough right there. Anyway, this is your boy Bomber, and now I'm out. You!